So today we are here because we are releasing version 2.0 of the Council's Guidance for Leadership in Sustainable Purchasing as a living document in our online SPLC community platform. During this webinar, we will put version 2.0 in the context of SPLC's other programs and provide a detailed tour of what's new in version 2.0 from me and our program director, Christina Mackin. And we appreciate Joanna Cortez from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, who is chair of SPLC's Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, for joining us to share a purchaser member's perspective on Guidance version 2.0. This is a brief overview of the agenda that we'll be working through today. We'll start with Guidance 2.0 in context, then learn what's new in version 2.0, what's staying the same in version 2.0, talk a little bit about continuing the dialogue as we continue to iterate our guidance. We've got a brief demo of the online platform, then hear from Joanna from a purchaser's perspective, and then reserve some time at the end for questions and answers from all of you. And again, as a reminder, we encourage you to use the online question interface to submit questions throughout the webinar. As we can, we will respond over the course of the webinar, and if we don't manage to do that, we will respond during the Q&A period. So, starting with Guidance 2.0 in context, for those of you who may be new to SPLC, I'll take just a few minutes to put the guidance into the context of our overall work. As you are all aware, we understand SPLC as the solution to a shared opportunity and a shared challenge. By our estimates, professionally managed purchasing by both private and public sector organizations totals $10 trillion annually in the US alone. This is an opportunity to send a $10 trillion signal to global supply chains saying, we want goods and services that are socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable. But we face collective challenges in realizing that opportunity. Purchasers lack access to shared resources to align the economic signals that they send, with the result that suppliers are inundated with a barrage of similar but different requests in the form of questionnaires, surveys, specifications, and other customized requests for information. This challenge is the fundamental barrier that SPLC seeks to address by gaining alignment across sectors, industries, and types of purchasers so that we can collectively send aligned economic signals to advance a shared positive future. We think of the SPLC as a big tent, tall enough to accommodate the significant leadership ambitions of our members, broad enough to involve the full community of stakeholders from the corporate, academic, government, and civil society sectors who need to be actively engaged in defining leadership in sustainable purchasing, and open at the edges, because we can only achieve the objectives of the organization through partnership and collaboration with other organizations. We use this big tent as a space of constructive collaboration where we engage with our members to identify the best existing available guidance for leadership in sustainable purchasing, and then work to accelerate the adoption of those best practices across sectors and regions, particularly in indirect categories from which all organizations buy. Our mission is to define and recognize leadership in order to drive significant market transformation. The guidance that we will be discussing today is based on 5 principles for leadership in sustainable purchasing that we published in 2014. Namely, that an organization can exercise leadership in sustainable purchasing through understanding the environmental, social, and economic performance of its purchasing, committing to take responsibility for the environmental, social, and economic consequences of its purchasing, delivering results against that commitment, and in the process promoting innovation and transparency in the marketplace. As we have worked with over 100 volunteers on our Technical Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Groups to develop the guidance for leadership in sustainable purchasing, these principles have been our reference point, a kind of moral compass. The first version of our guidance for leadership was published in February 2015 and was then piloted by approximately 100 organizations through the first half of 2015. The version of the guidance that we will be releasing today, version 2.0, reflects feedback from that pilot, as well as additional feedback and input that we have received from our expert advisors on the Technical Advisory Committee and technical advisory groups, as well as other stakeholders. The guidance is part of a suite of SPLC programs that are collectively designed to build upon one another and ultimately drive large-scale market transformation. The community of practice itself, the Big Tent, is the foundation of these programs. The principles provide the conceptual framework for our work. The guidance extends those principles into concrete recommendations and resources that purchasers can use to implement a strategic program of leadership in sustainable purchasing. Our training programs and webinars support application of the guidance by different audiences. The benchmarking system and self-assessment tools that we will be releasing at the end of this year will enable individual organizations to understand and measure how their own activities compare to the leadership activities of other organizations, both within their sector and beyond. That benchmarking system will then provide a starting point for the rating system, which we expect to start piloting in 2017, which will provide a quantitative method to formally recognize an organization's level of leadership. Taken together, these programs will transform the sustainability of the $10 trillion institutional purchasing marketplace in 3 steps. First, the principles, guidance, and training create a common language that enables purchasers and suppliers to engage more productively on sustainability. Second, suppliers who are responsive to purchasers' desires to improve their sustainable purchasing performance, as evaluated using the self-assessment framework, benchmarking tool, or rating system, will find a competitive advantage in sustainability innovation. Third, that competition will bring improved products to market, creating a new normal for everyone operating in the marketplace. This is important context for the release of Guidance version 2.0 because we have worked hard with our volunteer expert advisors to create guidance that is both useful to purchasers today and can also provide a framework for the self-assessment, benchmarking, and rating programs that will build upon this guidance in the future. This has been particularly important for the transition from Guidance version 1.0 to Guidance version 2.0, since we are starting to differentiate in the guidance itself among different approaches that might deliver different levels of leadership performance in the context of self-assessment, benchmarking, and ultimately the rating system. In terms of structure, the guidance is organized into 4 chapters. The first chapter provides a general overview of sustainable purchasing. Chapter 2 describes how to create a robust leadership-oriented program for sustainable purchasing. Chapter 3 describes how to run that program, and particularly how to use a strategy cycle, a cycle of launch, analyze, plan, commit, implement, report, and then repeat. Use that strategy cycle to identify key priorities and focus areas. Chapter 4 provides detailed guidance on 8 purchasing categories that are priorities for many of our members. For each category in version 2 of the guidance, we use the framework of the strategy cycle to organize the category guidance as well. It is important to note here that the guidance is built on hundreds of conversations with members, input from technical advisors, and insights from a variety of best practice guides developed for specific sectors, regions, and product categories. In synthesizing that input, our goal has never been to define the one true way to do strategic sustainable purchasing. In fact, much of the guidance simply references or describes approaches, methods, resources, and practices developed by others. Our goal has been to identify and name similarities between successful approaches in a way that provides SPLC members and the movement as a whole with a common language that enables leaders to share work more easily between sectors, regions, and organization types. We have found within the Council a powerful need for that common language and know that it will be useful to our members. In other words, the guidance is not simply a handbook for those trying to find their way. It is also a framework for facilitating wider and more efficient collaboration that pushes the leadership envelope. In a moment, Christina will walk you through in detail some of the changes from version 1 to version 2. These changes are in both the form and the content of the guidance. With respect to form, we have changed the delivery method for the guidance from a downloadable static PDF document to an interactive, dynamic, online publication. Users can still download sections or the entire document in PDF format, but the online format allows us to continue to update the document as new content becomes available, respond to inline feedback and comments from users, and strengthen cross-references within the guidance and to other online resources. With respect to content, in version 1.0, we focused on presenting a range of options available for exercising some version of leadership, without differentiating strongly among these options. The intent in version 1 was simply to develop a common language for understanding leadership in sustainable purchasing. In version 2, we have worked with our expert volunteer advisors to begin differentiating among different options as a basis for self-assessment, benchmarking, and ultimately the proposed rating system. Whereas in version 1.0, we collected feedback exclusively through piloting of the guidance in early 2015, in version 2.0, we will be able to take feedback on an ongoing basis and work with the TAC and tags to integrate this feedback into the live document on a rolling basis. Our intention in version 2.0 is to give leadership organizations more specific, practical recommendations, to make clear what leadership actions are, to bring clarity and simplicity while maintaining a high leadership standard. So with that overview, I will turn it over to Christina to talk in more detail about what has changed.
Thank you, Jason. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. This is Christina Mackin, Director of Programs with SPLC. I'm going to talk us through the next couple of items here, what's new in version 2.0, what's staying the same in version 2.0, and then how we'll continue the dialogue as a community moving forward. So, as Jason mentioned, one of the most exciting pieces of the delivery of guidance version 2.0 is the use of an online platform. Sam is going to give us a platform demonstration shortly, so I'm not going to talk too much about the mechanics of the platform itself, more about the content that's in there. So in terms of major changes, the section where you will see the most significant changes from version 1 to version 2 is in the category guidance, which is chapter 4. When we hosted the pilot, we got by far and away the most significant feedback in chapter 4, the most number of comments, and we had the most opportunity to really make improvements to help make the guidance more usable and more relevant for purchasers. So one big change as part of this was shifting all of our purchasing category guidance to the strategy cycle structure, which creates much better alignment between chapters 3 and chapter 4. In chapter 3, where we outline the strategic process for running a sustainable purchasing program, we now structure that process and have built that process right into the category guidance, which makes it much easier for organizations to look at that guidance as a kind of start, finish, continuously improve process that they'll go through in the context of any given purchasing category. This will help organizations to do a deeper analysis in the purchasing categories that they've deemed to be important through the prioritization process that they used by following the instructions in chapter 3. So just briefly taking a look at how this appears in the platform, you'll see within the fuchsia box on the left-hand side in the table of contents, we're looking at the cleaning and sanitizing products for facilities care content, and that content is organized into the various strategy cycle phases. And so by clicking on launch or analyze, it would drop down much more detailed information that walks through those steps, and that is applied across all of the purchasing categories that we address. In addition to shifting the structure of the categories, we also included more purchasing categories in version 2. We've added 3 categories within the chemically intensive products section. We've added space leasing under construction and renovation. We've done a much deeper dive into food service operations for version 2, and have also added janitorial paper products to the wood and agri-fiber products section. In addition to spending more time and investing more effort and content into the process that we want organizations going through to address the given purchasing categories and the guidance, We've also done a much deeper analysis of the impacts associated with each of the purchasing categories. So what you see on your screen here is the impacts associated with personal computers. This is up here because, in particular, the IT hardware and services tag spent a lot of time and a significant amount of effort really digging into the extraction and the manufacturing phase impacts associated with IT hardware and equipment. And you'll see in the revised versions of the guidance in those sections that there's also some effort to really push the envelope on some initiatives and some recommendations that we would recognize and would hope that purchasers would implement to start making progress in areas such as human rights and labor issues in extraction or manufacturing. So I, for one, am particularly excited about some of the recommendations and those changes that have resulted from the effort we've been able to put into really digging deeper into the impacts. We've also, wherever possible, enhanced the clarity and incorporated more relevant detail into the recommendations that are part of the guidance. So right here, we're looking at the product substitution recommendation in the cleaning and sanitizing products for facilities care guidance. So the way the guidance is structured, we're not only providing information on what specifically to substitute here, but how to do it. And that includes recommendations in detail on how to make facility-wide changes, how to address product testing, training, the details of what should be reporting, providing a reporting template, etc. So there's kind of much more nuts and bolts in addition to just the change that you should make, but really how to successfully implement that change. We've also provided much more detail wherever possible on standards and eco-labels. Jason alluded to this a bit earlier. We are going through the exercise of differentiating these programs wherever we can, and really helping purchasers understand the similarities and the differences between and among a plethora of eco-labels and standards where many of them exist within the same procurement category. We are also much better connected with our own resources and our own other programmatic work that we have now that we're launching this resource within the online community. So you'll see in guidance version 2.0 as you scroll through that there are references to a number of our case studies, our leadership award winners, highlights of their case studies and of their achievements are peppered throughout the guidance where it's relevant. We have links to relevant presentation content from SPLC summits, as well as commentary from interviews that we've had with our members over the years, referenced in the various chapters as well. Another very important change that we've been trying to make is to link to existing solicitation language that's available in the market which supports guidance objectives. Wherever we can, we've identified this solicitation language and we've linked it within the case studies, the resources section, as well as the implementation sections of the various purchasing categories. This is an area of ongoing work for us, and it's an area where we expect to put quite a bit of effort between now and the end of the year as well. So this is something where we're looking to all of you to also help us identify where there is solicitation language available in the market that would benefit our purchasers if it were made available in our guidance and if we could share it through our guidance. And so we will have many areas of the guidance flagged where we were unable to locate any solicitation language, or there's not much that really aligns with the recommendations in the guidance, and if folks in the market know of where that's available and can make it available to us, that would be hugely beneficial for continuing to improve the content. We've also made some relatively minor changes to the program and to the guidance, especially as it pertains to chapters 1 through 3. We've renamed chapters 2 and 3 and updated the cycle graphics to better indicate that the strategy cycle is something run multiple times for different purposes, such as setting program strategic priorities and then developing strategic plans for specific purchasing categories or issue areas. We've also expanded the spend analysis section. We're very much looking for feedback on this area as well, and we will continue to do further work on this section. We've developed some initial revisions to it based on the efforts of a spend analysis working group, which did a couple of months worth of work over the last few months, and we've made some of those changes in this version, and we expect to make further revisions in Q3 and Q4. So please help us understand if we're moving the recommendations on spend analysis in the right direction, and it will certainly provide us much needed intel into additional revisions that we'll make. We also have begun to release some of what we are calling quick start guides within guidance version 2.0. This will help various audiences more efficiently use the guidance. So we view the online delivery of our guidance as a major improvement to help folks with wayfinding and getting through what is several hundred pages worth of content. But there are definitely ways that we can continue to improve that. And the document and the content can still be pretty overwhelming if you don't know what's in it. And so the purpose of the quick start guides is to give various audience members a jump start at knowing what they in particular should be looking for based on who they are and what they are likely to be doing at their organization. So we have our first quick start guide available for chief procurement officers, and we'll be adding additional quick start guides for a number of other audience members over the course of the next several weeks. So that's a quick and dirty around what's new in this version. Also quite a bit that's staying the same. So for one thing, the importance of prioritization is really still paramount in guidance version 2.0. We address many purchasing categories in version 2.0, and not all of these are relevant to every purchaser and every organization. We really expect that organizations are using the strategic prioritization process that's in chapters 2 and 3 to determine and to inform which categories need deeper analysis and which of the many categories that we have in chapter 4 should actually be the focal point of an organization's work. And so prioritization, again, is something that we want all organizations using our guidance thinking about and working toward, as opposed to just kind of doing some things over here and some other sustainable purchasing activities over there. We want to know that there is some intention and some significance to what organizations are choosing to focus on and how they arrived at those conclusions. We are also still very much promoting the use of a strategic process. Again, this was recommended in version 1.0. It was the foundation and is the foundation for chapters 2 and 3. And we've elevated the importance of it in version 2 by restructuring the purchasing category guidance and creating much better alignment between those 3 chapters. And it's now much easier to kind of intuitively understand, based on the organization of chapter 4, how it relates to chapter 3, and chapter 3 kind of becomes a lot more usable when you have the context for implementation and some specific examples in the purchasing category guidance. We are still recommending and still promoting the use of cross-functional teams led by a champion. We want organizations taking an integrated approach to sustainable purchasing, composed of internal and external stakeholders who can advance the program. And so it's important also that there's a champion kind of leading the charge and helping to take view of that entire program, and we provide guidance on how to select a champion and what that person does and how they can work with different audiences and departments as they're doing their work. But this is one piece of the guidance that we think is really critical to the overall success of an organization's sustainable purchasing program. We also are still promoting category management, and you will see that pretty significantly expanded in chapter 4 within the purchasing categories. So our guidance, the recommendations go pretty well beyond simply what to buy. we have recommendations for demand reduction, behavior change, supplier engagement opportunities, all of which lead to impact reduction in given categories. So here on your screen, we happen to be looking at the food and beverage for food services category, where one of the main recommendations and a number of the resources are around aligning food service with the needs and preferences of the target population in order to address waste generation from food and disposable serviceware. And so the intention here is that one of the main ways you can reduce your overall impact associated with your food service operation is to simply waste less. And in order to waste less, one of the things you can do is to better align what you are serving, what your menu options are, with the needs, the restrictions, the preferences of those consumers who are eating it. So you will see those examples such as that all throughout the guidance. And all right, oops, sorry about that. So next, we are, oops, still on the wrong slide. Okay, so we are also continuing to develop our program in a way that is iterative. So, you know, our shift between version 1 and version 2 was pretty significant in that a lot changed significantly, and it all changed at the same time. And yet we still know we are not done with guidance work. I have quite a list of tweaks that I will keep making because it's very hard to stop making changes once you start. But now that we've reached version 2, we're really going to start shifting to more frequent but less jarring revisions of the guidance. And so, for example, we'll be working on incorporating additional solicitation language into guidance version 2. We'll be working on continuing to improve the spend analysis recommendations, doing some deeper revisions on chapters 2 and chapters 3 in terms of the strategic process and the strategy cycle recommendations that we have to make sure that they're as relevant and as clearly articulated as possible. But we're shifting to that more of an ongoing revision cycle, as opposed to everything is under revision at the same time and then everything changes all at once. And so this will really help us kind of bring more value and to members, as you know, everything won't be out of date at the same time, kind of waiting months and months for a new version that we've been working on to come out. So with that, let's talk briefly about how we will continue this dialogue to continue to make revisions and improvements to our content. As Jason mentioned, and as Sam will show you how to do, we are collecting feedback through an online format where the guidance is housed. This is how we want to collect feedback, and will be the primary way that we as SPLC staff will gain an understanding for where purchasers and where our stakeholders need us to make revisions to address clarity, to help with implementation, and to really allow organizations to more successfully address sustainable purchasing. You'll see throughout the guidance and in Sam's demo, you'll have this pointed out to you, where we have flagged content for feedback with this fuchsia notation. We'll also have comments that are made from staff in the document that pose specific questions to the person who's reviewing it, and you're able to leave comments right along with it. So we have a number of questions that we would like to pose in content for chapters 2 and 3, as well as with chapter 4. And again, you'll see those as you explore the guidance and have a chance to take a look at the specific recommendations. So please feel welcome to provide feedback as well. I do want to note on all parts of the guidance, not only the pieces that have been flagged. The pieces that have been flagged from SPLC's perspective are the ones that we've prioritized, wanting to get an understanding of how our stakeholders are reacting to them, and to kind of help us understand how they would be working in the market. But the comment ability is available across the board on all parts of the guidance. And so certainly submit comments anywhere you feel that commenting is necessary. So at this point, let's turn it over to Sam to give us our platform demo.
SPLC's guidance for leadership in sustainable purchasing version 2.0 is hosted in SPLC's online member community, a place where SPLC members go to access resources, network, and collaborate. The community can be accessed via the member login link on SPLC's main website. Once you log into the community platform, notice the top navigation menu, which includes search, activity, groups, people, resources, uploads, calendar, and invite users. Not surprisingly, clicking resources is where you'll find guidance version 2.0 housed. The first thing in the resources section is information about the guidance with links to open the guidance interface. The first thing you'll notice is that the window is divided into two, with the table of contents on the left and the guidance content on the right. First, let's take a look at the table of contents. This is the primary way to browse the guidance. By default, the guidance opens to the section titled Introduction. The introduction heading and its subheadings are colored black instead of blue to indicate that this is the area in focus. If I click on a different section, it will turn black and the right-hand column will reload with all of the contents under that heading. If I drill into one of those sections, you'll see that it becomes the only black part of the table of contents, and the right-hand column is now showing only the information related to that subheading. This is important because there are several more navigation features just above the table of contents that relate to the table of contents and what is currently being displayed in the right-hand column. On the left here is a breadcrumb trail that shows you where you are in the document. This is especially handy if you close the table of contents to free up more screen real estate for the guidance content itself. With the table of contents closed, you can use the previous and next buttons to move forward and back through the document in order. Next to the previous and next buttons are the print and download buttons. These buttons make it easy to take sections of the guidance with you offline. When you click the print or download buttons, whatever portion of the guidance that is currently being displayed will be exported. Opening back up the table of contents, I can even choose to export the entire document because clicking on the table of contents heading itself loads the entire document in the right column. I can also share the document or portions of the document online using the links in the table of contents. If I right-click and copy the URL for a table of contents link and drop it in an email, my colleague will be taken directly to that section of the guidance after they've logged into the platform, of course. The guidance includes hundreds of pages of advice on best practices, program design, solicitation criteria, and more, which can be quite overwhelming, especially when just starting out. One of the nice things about the new platform is that there are several ways you can get quickly to the content most relevant to you. Browsing the table of contents, of course, is one good way. The guidance is divided into 4 intuitive chapters: background, program design, program operation, and category guidance. Especially if you're going to be leading your organization's sustainable purchasing efforts, spending a few minutes exploring the document structure and the section overviews will be very helpful. Something new coming in guidance version 2.0 are quick start guides. This one, for example, offers a busy chief procurement officer 4 simple steps to get their team and organization using the guidance. Should they want more detail, hyperlinks will take them to the specific guidance sections that support those 4 steps. The search bar is one good place to start if you're looking for something very specific, such as guidance related to fuel purchasing. There are a variety of different types of content within the guidance. So the layout uses several formats to help users discern the differences. Throughout the document, actual step-by-step guidance is in black. Helpful practical tips are provided in green text and call-out boxes. More detailed guidance and supporting information is provided in blue text and call-out boxes. And examples such as sample templates, case studies, or quotations from practitioners are documented in orange text and boxes. Now that the guidance is online, we're integrating it more and more with the useful content within the online community. The case study library generated by our Leadership Awards program has a number of great examples of organizations enacting the principles and recommendations outlined within the guidance. Here you can see an excerpt from a 2016 Leadership Award-winning case study, which shows the substantial environmental and financial benefits of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts EPP program. Users can click for more information, which opens the case study in the case study library. Like the guidance content itself, this case study can be easily downloaded and shared with colleagues. One of the most exciting features of having the guidance in the online community is having a much more dynamic way to collect feedback from our member community and promote dialogue among users right inside the guidance. Simply click on the comment button at the end of any section of the guidance and leave a comment like you would on a typical social media platform. Your account is automatically connected to your comment, so if we need more information from you or want to discuss anything with you further, we have an easy way to be in touch. We will also be using the platform to solicit feedback on specific sections of the guidance so that we can continue to refine it. To see the sections that have been flagged for feedback, click the Feedback Requested link at the end of the table of contents. These sections will also stand out within the guidance with a fuchsia Feedback Requested note on them. If we're looking for a specific kind of feedback, we'll put a comment on the section explaining that, as Christina has done here. If you haven't already, now would be a great time to invite your colleagues to join the SPLC online community and check out the guidance, forums, and other resources. You can send them an invite from within the community by clicking the Invite Users button on the right side of the community navigation bar, and then inputting their email addresses. That's the quick tour of the new features of Guidance version 2.0 within the online community. We hope you enjoyed perusing the guidance and look forward to having you share your thoughts with us. Thanks so much.
So Sam, thank you very much. And I just wanted to underline the fact that this demo video as a standalone video will also be available in the community if you wanted to send your colleagues a link to this video as a quick introduction to the guidance and how it works. So with that, I'm going to move us forward. The agenda. Now we'll have an opportunity to hear from Joanna on her perspective on the guidance as someone who's been involved as chair of the Technical Advisory Committee and active in the development of the guidance really from its beginnings. So I'm going to hand control over to you, Joanna, in just a moment.
Great. All right. Thanks for having me today, everybody. I'm really, really excited to have the new Guidance 2.0 to start working with in our program. I know we're here to talk about Guidance version 2.0, but I thought I should mention briefly that we've already been using Guidance version 1.0 to really improve our program, which has been in place since the 90s. But Guidance version 1.0 has really helped us strengthen our program, which is a partnership between the state of Minnesota's Department of Administration and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, which is the organization which I work for. So it's always been a partnership effort, but using the SPLC guidance version 1.0, we've been able to create a shared vision and a shared mission, which is reflected on the screen here. And that was a challenge in itself, since these are two organizations, two different state agencies with pretty different missions. And to be able to come to a shared mission and vision was a really big step for us. And it's inspiring us to develop a stronger and, more importantly, more efficient program. So since version 1.0 has been very helpful to us over the last year and a half, we're even more excited about the new features of Guidance 2.0, which Christina and Sam both walked through. So I just thought I'd share a little bit about what we're looking forward to using the 2.0 version for. One thing that is really exciting for me is that Guidance 2.0 gives us the opportunity to engage organization-wide and really across two different organizations, which is a big feat, I think. As Christina mentioned, version 2.0 includes some new helpful features such as wayfinding, the ability to share discrete sections within the guidance, and direct links to case studies. And all of that is going to allow us to share resources more efficiently across our agencies. One of the most common asks I get when we're working on a specific contract is, show me how this has worked before. And adding those direct links to case studies is going to be really easy for me to find it and then for the actual buyer to access. So I also think that these additions are going to allow us to motivate staff and leadership in both organizations to join the online community. I think pointing to the usability of the new guidance is going to be a really great value to our organizations. And I hope that by inviting them, like Sam mentioned, this is a good opportunity to invite these folks who haven't been directly engaged yet. I think that by inviting them, it'll motivate them to be more engaged in the community that SPLC has built, which in general I think will be valuable to our organizations and to the broader community. I also really like this direct feedback process. I like that SPLC is committing to have a more iterative process with the updates to the guidance. It'll make it easier for people to actually want to provide feedback instead of feeling like they have to go through a more formal process. And I know that will help our organizations provide that feedback. I also think that the ability to share experiences directly linking to the guidance will be helpful. I know I found the online community platform really useful over the last year or so since it's been up and running. And I think the ability to kind of comment within the guidance will foster even more collaboration and some really good, useful, timely conversations. And I know Jason mentioned that one of the goals of SPLC is to foster more efficient collaboration, and I can't agree more that this update to the guidance will help meet that goal. Finally, I think that the connection of the category guidance directly with the process guidance found in Chapter 3 will be really, really useful. It'll make it easier for us to implement some of the recommendations in the guidance and also help us make the connections for leadership within our organizations to, these are our strategy cycles, and this is the way that we're going to implement some of these category guidance into our strategies. I think our strategy priorities will really be helpful. And it'll make us stick to our priorities a little better. I think that the blending of those two sections will really help with that. And on the note of the category guidance, I also really like that upfront section that identifies the relevant impacts for each category. That'll help us make the case even more quickly to our leadership as to why we should be focusing on a specific area. I also just thought I'd talk a little bit about how we intend to use the Guidance 2.0. As I mentioned earlier, we've been using the Guidance version 1.0 to help form our mission and vision, get leadership buy-in, and we'll definitely continue to use that in the development of our framework. We're also really excited to see the integration of the strategy cycles into the direct guidance, since we're planning to use the strategy cycles in our program framework. And we'll definitely be accessing the IT category guidance for some upcoming IT-related contracts. In fact, we're hoping that we'll be able to integrate some of the newer recommendations in the IT category on our upcoming computers contracts. I also think that the new guidance format will allow me to directly link my colleagues to the specific sections within each category, so that we can more efficiently incorporate those recommendations into our requests for proposals and requests for bids. Finally, I just wanted to highlight some thoughts for future editions, especially since Christina mentioned this will be an ongoing revision process. I know that at the SPLC Summit last month, we talked quite a bit about engaging diverse suppliers, small and medium businesses. So I really think that as the working group for building sustainability capacity for small and medium suppliers gets going, that'll be something that could be added to the guidance. I think that would be helpful, as well as establishing a metric for sustainable purchasing. I know that each category guidance area talks about measuring, and that's critical, but finding some sort of broader metric for sustainable purchasing would be helpful, and I know we talked a bit about that at the summit too. And for our organization, and I'm sure others, I think balancing priorities within organizations and across organizations can be really challenging, and I think maybe a little bit more guidance on ways we might approach that would be welcome and very helpful. Those are the things I wanted to share today, and I look forward to engaging with folks in the feedback platform soon.
Joanna, thank you so much for sharing those perspectives with us. So we have about 10 minutes or so left in the remainder of this webinar. We have received some questions through the online platform, and I would encourage those of you who do have questions to submit questions through the online platform. I will try to go through those questions and pull out questions that I think would be of interest to the largest number of participants today, but we will also go through and answer any question that we receive in the online platform and post those responses so that every question does get answered if it is submitted through the online platform during the webinar. So with that, I will encourage you to submit those questions, and I'm going to start reading off a few that we've heard. First, Christina, this question is probably best directed to you. The question is from Sandra Cannon, and she asks, version 2.0 does not seem to be available yet on the SPLC website. When will version 2.0 be posted?
It should be available through the community platform. So if you log into the community and go to the resources tab, all of those links should be live and taking you to the content. And we will check that to be sure, but we did turn that on earlier today.
Great. Thank you. And another question for you. Has there been any consideration of the various pertinent ISO standards, such as ISO 14001 or ISO 2400?
Yes, so with regard to ISO 20400, that is some work that we have been engaged with over the course of the past couple of years through our liaison status on the ISO PC 277 committee. That work is in its final stages of development, and they expect that it will be available for publication in early 2017. At that point, we will incorporate references and incorporate its content into our guidance as appropriate. There are a lot of parallels between what's in the ISO 20400 content and the strategic process and the recommendations that we make in chapters 2 and 3. So we certainly expect that there will be some greater alignment between those two once that document's fully available.
Great. Thank you, Christina. Next question that I have in the online platform is, does version 2.0 have any discussion about supporting purchasing from diverse suppliers and social responsibility?
Shall I take that one?
Sure.
Okay, so we have some, I would say a small amount relative to other content, a small discussion on supplier diversity. One of the initiatives that we'll be working on in the second half of the year is around supplier development, and I think Sam could probably speak to that a lot more in terms of the details of what that work will be, but I would say it's something that we're going to be getting into more moving forward, as opposed to it being really deeply addressed in version 2. I think that's something we'll incorporate through one of our iterative updates.
Great, thank you. I will say that there is generalized guidance on those topics, but we haven't dug in too deeply, as Christina said.
One thing I do just want to mention is all of our purchasing categories have discussions of the social impacts and the social dimension of sustainability. I do want to make that note and not cause confusion around that. But yeah, that's all.
This is Sam. I'll just make a comment about the supplier development working group that Christina mentioned, and maybe one other thing too, which is that we have category-specific guidance. One of the things that has come up over the last year has been the challenge of what do you do about issue areas that really apply across all categories. So supplier diversity is a great example of that. It's something where you could find diverse suppliers in any category. So it's not really a category-specific issue. And how we address those types of opportunities is something that we've been talking about and are still working out. One of the things that we are doing related to that is the supplier development working group, which has been asked for by SPLC members, many of whom are supplier diversity leaders within their organizations. And this working group's focus is going to be on answering the question, how can we share the effort of supporting our suppliers, and primarily our small, medium suppliers, which have significant overlap with our diverse suppliers? How can we support them in climbing the maturity curve on sustainability? How can we help them bring their sustainability capabilities up to being leadership level so it isn't a competitive disadvantage for them to be competing as we raise our expectations from a sustainability perspective? It is instead a competitive advantage for them. And large organizations have some resources with which they can do some support and some training and that type of thing, but not all organizations do. And so we're interested in sharing notes across organizations and with peer councils that are doing collaborative work, such as supplier development councils, to sort of figure out everything that's already being done in that way, and then where SPLC and SPLC's community might be able to share some effort there and make it easier and more streamlined for both buyers and suppliers.
Thanks, Sam. So, and I am going to, for those of you who might be interested in asking your question in person, I am going to give you the opportunity to raise your hand to ask a question, but I'll also go through the questions that we have here first and give those people an opportunity to ask their question in person. I've put up on the screen how you can make sure that I am able to see your hand if it's raised and how I'm able to unmute you. But before I do that, we do have a question from Carl Bruscotter. I'll just read it before we go to the live questions. There's been a lot of conversation about engaging suppliers via surveys and questionnaires. Are documents such as these part of the 2.0 category guidance? I'll let Christina respond to that question in a moment, but I do want to highlight that we have another project that started about 6 to 8 months ago and is ongoing as a collaboration among a number of organizations called the Committee on Supplier Ratings. We did have a meeting at the summit related to that. In fact, a couple of sessions related to our work on supplier ratings and questionnaires. We do expect to be continuing that work through that working group and then finding ways to fit the outputs from that working group into the guidance. I'll let Christina to respond to whether she thinks there are particular areas where we already have some guidance on that.
There are some areas. One example is within the professional services recommendations. That technical advisory group developed a questionnaire specific to the context of professional service, to be geared toward professional services providers. And then in some other sections, we do also provide short lists of questions. They're not necessarily in survey format, but they could be used as survey questions that we would recommend through supplier engagement that purchasers are asking of their suppliers.
Great. Thanks, Christina. We have a question from Sia Singhal, but I'm not able to unmute Sia, so I don't think. Let me see if I can. 1 second. Can we hear you? Doesn't seem like it's working. So the question.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question about, so besides the category we mentioned in the version 2.0, so besides this category, what other categories will be discussed in the future?
Great, thank you. Christina?
So one area that we have not gotten around to yet that we do intend to is apparel and linens. That is a purchasing category that's not currently in the guidance that we would like to get integrated into the guidance. And then there are also additional kind of product subsets within some of our existing broader categories like IT or construction. For example, a category that would fall under construction and renovation would be guidance for Class B office space. So recommendations around buildings where they're never going to meet an existing green building certification. What are the best steps you could take for your purchasing and your operations in that context? So those are two, and we're certainly open to other categories that our members find relevant and have in demand. But going back to what Sam said, one of the main areas of focus in the immediate term is addressing kind of impact or issue areas that span across multiple purchasing categories. So things like supplier engagement and development, supplier assessment and surveying, things like that.
Great. Thanks, Christina. And we had a couple of questions and a comment from Lynn Johansson. I'm just going to unmute you, Lynn. See if you can. Can we?
Sure. Which question did you want me to respond to?
Well, you had a question about small business, and then if you wanted to add your comments, please feel free to do that as well.
Okay. Our experience in the purchasing area is that when somebody tries to take a big company tool and simply resize it, it does not work for small business. Now, having said that, let me clarify that when I'm talking about small business, I'm talking about companies with less than 50 people in them, because that's the plethora of the business profile in North America, whether it's Canada or the US. So we've just found that you have to start from the ground up as opposed to coming from the top down on them. The other thing is, in the recent version of ISO 14000 2015, there are some different requirements now, or intensified requirements around life cycle perspective, and they're looking more at how the relationship between suppliers and external providers, whether they are in scope or out of scope. And what I mean by that is when a company is defining the scope of its environmental management system, if a supplier is in scope, they will be treated differently than if they are out of scope, because that will affect the company's environmental management system elements. But there's also a difference between now looking at what they consider or call outsourced processes. And outsourced processes is a very carefully defined term that has a greater clarification in the annex. And so, you might want to, as you are kind of morphing your way forward, have a more intense look at that, because I think that there's an opportunity for greater synergy between what you're doing and what the standards are talking about these days.
Sounds like it.
So, Lynn, first, thank you very much for those thoughtful comments. I'm going to ask any of our panelists, and I'm going to include Sam in that, to respond to the small business question. I think we're going to have to consider that the last question and then we'll wrap up. And if there are additional questions that anyone submits through the online platform, we will respond to those when we post the webinar.
I apologize. Were you wanting me to respond to that?
Christina, Sam, or Joanna, I think any of you might have thoughts on, because I think we have been sensitive to both small businesses as purchasers and small businesses as suppliers. And I'd just be curious for you to flag the places where you think that's the case.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think you'll, if you haven't already read the guidance and the process guidance in chapters 2 and 3, I think you'll see, as Jason said earlier, that it really doesn't suggest that there's one right way. It really suggests, taking into account your organizational context, looking for opportunities to build your program iteratively, taking advantage of the unique aspects or unique activities of your organization, really, instead of a one-size-fits-all approach to thinking about what you should be working on, it really encourages you to do some work to understand where your specific opportunities and impacts are, so that you can be tailored and focused in a way that is efficient for your organization. So there are a lot of ways where I think our process guidance, is tailored for small organizations or organizations of any size. And I have heard from small organizations that have used it. That said, I just want to say one other thing, that we would welcome further feedback on that point from anyone, and you can submit it through the online community. One thing I do want to mention before we wrap the call, I did get a question already about whether or not the guidance version 2.0 is available to the public. This is a member-only resource. Some aspects of it are already available. The principles, for example, there's about a 25-page document outlining the principles and the framework for the guidance that is available for download off the website. Some of the worksheets from the guidance, obviously this webinar giving an overview of the guidance will be as well. Some of you may remember that for guidance version 1.0, we had an excerpted version of the guidance that was about a quarter of the guidance that was public, and we intend to do something similar with this online version, but the technical aspects of doing that are forthcoming.
Great. Sam, thank you very much. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for tuning in for this webinar. Thank you to Sam, Christina, and Joanna for answering questions and for your respective presentations. If you do have additional questions, please do submit them in the online platform or just drop us an email at info@sustainablepurchasing.org. And with that, we're going to close this session. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.